नमस्कार, मेरा नाम पूजा है और मैं आज आपका स्वागत करती हूँ हमारे दरीचा के इस खास सेशन में जो देश भर में लड़कियों के एजुकेशन पे बेस्ड है। और इसका हम लोगों ने फोकस रखा है कि किस तरीके से जर्नी एक विजुअलाइजेशन के तरीके से हम लोग आपको दिखा सकें। और आज के हमारे खास मेहमान हैं श्री अनुराग शुक्ला जी। इन्होंने PhD किया हुआ है IIMA अहमदाबाद से एंड MPhil और मास्टर्स दिल्ली यूनिवर्सिटी एंड अजीम प्रेमजी फाउंडेशन से। इसके साथ ही इन्होंने एजुकेशन पे काफी एजुकेशन और खासकर एजुकेशन को किस तरीके से पॉलिसीज, ह्यूमैनिटीज और हिस्ट्री और साथ ही डिजिटल चीजों के साथ किस तरीके से मर्ज करके आगे बढ़ाया जा सकता है, उस पर काम किया है। इनके प्रीवियस जो काम के ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस हैं उनमें बड़े बड़े फाउंडेशन जैसे अजीम प्रेमजी फाउंडेशन, प्रथम एजुकेशन फाउंडेशन एंड टाइम्स ग्रुप और बिजनेस स्टैंडर्ड्स जैसे ग्रुप्स शामिल हैं। तो हम लोग शुरू करने से पहले थोड़ा सा जान लेते हैं इस विषय को हमने क्यों चुना है। इसकी एक वजह थी क्योंकि भारत को आजाद हुए करीब 75 साल हो चुके हैं और महिलाओं का एजुकेशन इतने सालों में कहाँ पहुंचा और थ्रू दी हिस्ट्री और फिर कॉलोनियल टाइम पे हम लोग कहाँ पर थे, और इसके साथ ही आगे आने वाले वक्त में हम लोग उनकी एजुकेशन पे क्या कर सकते हैं, इसको एक विजुअल तरीके से हम लोग देखने की कोशिश करेंगे। तो इसी के साथ मैं स्वागत करती हूँ सर आपका। थैंक यू सो मच, आपने बहुत कम टाइम में हमारा इनविटेशन एक्सेप्ट किया और मैं ज्यादा वक्त ना लेते हुए आपको हैंड ओवर करती हूँ।
धन्यवाद पूजा। I hope I am audible.
Yes.
Yeah. So this talk will be both Hindi and English. So I'll be talking like kind of switching from one language to another language.
Yes.
And whenever anybody has question, they can directly ask me, or I can continue for 40 minutes and then we can keep 20 minutes for question and answers as well. So before and also this is something very interesting. So girls education is something which we feel that in India it came around like in early 19th century it started. But if you look at the global history of education, you will see that how there have been many similarities. Like there have been parallel movements happening across the world when it comes to girls education in India. And in many cases, actually, India did much better than other countries, even the Western countries. So we would like to sum up those cases. But before getting into this topic of girls' education in India, we need to look at the history of education in pre-colonial India. So what was the status of education even before discussing the entry of girls in schools? So there have been really good documentation by Dharampal in his book The Beautiful Tree, where he looks at the colonial records, and he found out that there were pathshalas and maktabs across states in India. So and there used to be these village teachers. And these village teachers generally used to be paid by local population, that local community, या फिर जो वहाँ के स्थानीय राजा होते थे वो लोग उसको इन चीजों को उन स्थानीय शिक्षकों को अपॉइंट करते थे अपने बच्चों को पढ़ाने के लिए. And every single village used to have these teachers, but the subject used to differ. So the subject were more around like doing basic calculation, arithmetic, language. So it was not a formal school in that sense, but education used to be delivered even in that there. So there were maktabs, and there was generally no discrimination as such. So what Dharampal has documented that even the children of marginalized communities were allowed to attend those schools. But again, when it comes to girls' education, these pathshalas and maktabs were not open for girls. So girls were generally educated at home. Even in the rich families, they generally preferred their girls getting educated at home by the teachers appointed by them. So and just talking about this indigenous education before, like in pre-colonial education. So A.D. Campbell, who was collector of Bellary, he notes in one of his diaries that in many villages where formerly there were schools, there are now none. So in a way, when Britishers came to India, there was a complete destruction of indigenous education in India. So they tried to impose their own way of education on Indian education system. And that we can see from like Madras presidency data, which was collected in 1822-25, reports of W. Adams of Bengal and Bihar, 1835-38, and the later Punjab survey of D.W. Leitner in 1882. But when it comes to girls' education, these we have to be very clear that these maktabs and pathshalas were generally not open for the girls. And it's not just that in India, the girls were struggling to enter education, but even similar case we found in UK also. So UK also had something called Victorian morality in those days, and that Victorian morality, especially when it came to women, it prevented or it forbid women from going out of house for any purpose, even for schooling. So sending girls to school was a very recent phenomena in United Kingdom as well, like in mid 19th centuries. So there is this really interesting book by Christina, Educating Women, Schooling and Identity in England and France. And she documents how the schooling for girls evolved from 1800 to 1867. And she argues that it was not until the late 18th century that religious organizations in Great Britain established a school for female students. And even then, 1875, there was a law passed in British Parliament, which kind of made education compulsory for all, even including girls. Even after that, the parents were not sending their girls to school. Instead, they preferred educating their girls in their homes. So this is part of a parallel movement happening. So girls' education is a movement which is parallelly happening both in United Kingdom as well as in India. So even in United Kingdom, there were these fierce debate happening between utilitarians and these conservatives, like people who were coming from a very conventional conservative point of view, saying that girls should not be going to schools. And then there were these utilitarians who took a very utilitarian view of it, and they said that no, if girls go to school, they can also in future become part of the economy. So that would benefit people in a larger sense. And also for a very long time, East India Company, as we all know, we all know that it came to India in 1600. And for a very long time, East India Company followed this policy of not allowing missionaries in its jurisdiction, because they somehow felt that if they allow missionaries in their own jurisdiction, it is going to create controversies with the local populace, because people generally in India are very much attached to their own religion. And if any conversion activities happen, that would create unnecessary hurdles for East India Company itself. So even though in their charter of 1698, which clearly stated that the duty of ministers of religion to give education along with their primary duty of spreading the gospel, for a very long time, East India Company did not allow these missionaries to kind of do any kind of activity in their jurisdiction. But it was only after the passage of Charter Act of 1813, which actually committed the East India Company to allowing Christian missionaries to carry on their educational activities in India. And it is from their point of time we can see the schools for girls being opened, where the presence of where these missionaries were present. And also this has a very interesting backstory. So the Charles Wood, who was behind this Charter Act of 1830, he initially came to India in 1780s as an officer for East India Company. And then some tragedy happened at home. He again went back to England, and I think his sons passed away, or due to some disease or, and due to that tragedy, he became a very conservative Christian. And then he started campaigning in Britain, along with other British parliamentarian, saying that why are we not spreading the message of Christ in India? And why are these missionaries not allowed in the jurisdiction of East India Company? So he campaigned for this for almost 2 decades in the Britain, and this Charter Act of 1813 was a result of his campaigning for almost for 2 decades, and in this charter, that's why we see that uh, East India Company being asked to allow these missionaries to kind of do their activities in India. So, and for a very long time, so this is classicist versus Anglicist debate. So initially, East India Company were, because they did not want to interfere in local education in local communities, they actually promoted indigenous education. So we would see that how Calcutta Madrasa was established in 1780s. In Calcutta, again, Sanskrit College was established, and it was funded by East India Company. But again, when this Charter Act was passed, and then we would see that how initially these classicists were dominant in the policy making, so they had their own way. But gradually, the East India Company started having their officers coming from utilitarian wing. For example, even Macaulay or Bentinck, they all of them were utilitarian. So there was controversy that whether in India East India Company should promote indigenous education in languages like Sanskrit, Arabic, or it should completely remove indigenous education and impose or introduce English education in India. And this controversy went on till 1835, and then we know that 1835 we had Macaulay's Minute passed, and that's it. That no, we don't need to invest in indigenous education in India. And Indians should also have a opportunity to go through English education. So finally, these Anglicists they won, and that was a major victory for them. And also there was this regular conversation dialogues happening between these Anglicists and classicists, these traditionalists in India, and also that they even traditionalists in India like Raja Ram Mohan Rai, Ishwar Chandra Sagar, and in Maharashtra. And also this is very interesting, it is only in these presidencies we kind of see a movement for educating girls in India, both Bombay in these three presidencies: Bombay Presidency, Madras Presidency, and Calcutta Presidency. So all three places there was discourse, discussion, dialogue happening between traditionalists and these Anglicists on how to allow girls in schools. So, like we see, the Church Missionary Society in, again, Madras Presidency. So because now missionaries were allowed to open their schools, the first boarding school for girls came up in Tirunelveli in 1821. And by 1840, the Scottish Church Society constructed 6 schools with the roll strength of 200 girls. So it was Christian missionaries who first opened these schools and allowed the entry of girls in those schools. And Madras Presidency, we would see that by the mid-century, there were almost 8,000 girls who were studying in such schools. And in other presidencies also, in Calcutta and Bombay, people were there was a growing awareness towards girls' education. So 1830s and 1840s, likes of Ishwar Chandra Sagar, Ram Mohan Roy, John Eliot, Drinkwater, Bethune College, Ram Gopal Ghosh, Raja Dakshina Ranjan Mukherjee, Pandit Madan Mohan, Tarka Lankar, or Tarka brothers, Bhaskar Pandurang, Daoba. All of these were reformers who were simultaneously campaigning against child marriage poor living conditions of widows, and denial of education to women. And and the part of their campaign was also opening schools for girls. So the first school which was established for girls by an Indian, not by a British, not by missionary, was this school called the Kali Krishna Girls High School in 1847. It came up in 1847. It was again started by Kali Krishna Mitra, Nabeen Krishna Mitra, and Pierre Charan Sarkar. So these were the first people who kind of opened a school for girls in being Indian, and also most of this was coming from all the communities. Now they wanted to send their girls, and both girls and boys, to these modern schools. They also wanted them to get educated in English education, and also in colonial all of them at that time, they wanted to be part of colonial bureaucracy. So this movement to send girls to schools was also part of upward mobility attempts, so that these girls can study and then can become part of, they can also do some jobs. So also community kind of made an effort, collective effort, towards sending girls to schools. And we also know that like Jyotirao Phule and Savitribai Phule, they opened their school for girls, and again they allowed the entry of all even marginalized sections in their school in 1848. And they opened two more schools in 1851 and 52 in Pune. And similar in 1849, Bethune School was founded in Calcutta. And again, it was secular native female school. So these were some of the schools which were opened in the first half of 19th century, right? And but the most dramatic change we see in the second half of 19th century, when we see a kind of larger movement happening, where girls are now being sent to schools. And this we can see in the Woods Dispatch of 1854, which acknowledges the importance of female education and employment. So even the colonial government is now recognizing the importance of girls' education. And it also notes that in 1871, there were 134 secondary and 1,760 primary school for girls. And by 1901, 1902, these number increased to 461 and 5,628 respectively. And this bulk of these bulk of schools came from community-led initiatives. And how these community-led initiatives kind of derived this movement. So, for example, look at this case of Dadabhai Naroji. So, in October 1849, Dadabhai Naroji and 12 other Maharashtrian and Parsi, again he studied at Elphinstone College in Bombay, and after getting through modern education, English education, he also wanted girls from their community, like Parsi community, to also get educated in English education. So with other Parsi Elphinstonians, Dadabhai Naroji, he opened 6 schools under the auspices of Students' Literary and Scientific Society. And between these, among these 3 schools, 3 were for Parsi girls, and 3 schools were for Hindu Maharashtrian girls. So now even communities are in the later half of 19th century, we see that even now communities are making this effort to open schools for their own girls coming from their community. So the Parsi girls and Hindu Maharashtrian girls. And similar movement we also see other, for example, Lok Hitwadi or Gopal Hari Deshmukh and Mahadev Govind Ranade. They also launched a campaign for compulsory education, also known as mass education and girls education, in the Bombay Presidency in 1870s. And in that movement, they also urged the government to establish institutions in rural areas, because these movements were mainly limited to the urban areas, or like in Madras, Kolkata, or Bombay. So they also said that government should also make an initiative where the schools for girls are also open to rural areas. And And if you need girls' schools, you also need teachers who are going to teach in those girls' schools. So all these reformers, they also requested government to open teachers training college, and that teachers training college should be training women to become teachers in the schools for girls. So, and that's how we see that Mary Carpenter, who was an educationist from England, she was invited to India to train women on how to teach these girls. So the first teachers training college for women was opened in Pune in 1870. So similar movement, you would see that the communities are now making effort to open, investing money, making effort to open schools for girls. So Magan Bhai Karamchand, he was a Seth. He was a businessman industrialist in Ahmedabad. He donated rupees 20,000 to establish 2 girls' schools in Ahmedabad. Dadoba Pandurang, an old acquaintance of Naroji's, reported in mid 1850s that there were 2 private schools in Ahmednagar district in Maharashtra, and that some Muslim girls attended. It was a privately run schools. So now you would see that this whole movement for educating girls in school was reaching to even these pockets which were around these presidency towns. So from reaching to Ahmedabad, reaching to Ahmednagar, Mangalore, all other cities. We would see some of those pictures. And now trading communities like Marwadis, Baniyas and other communities were also, they wanted their girls to get interested in education because, for example, in Marwadi communities, the men in the family, they used to travel a lot across the country, even going out of the country. And mostly it were with women who were left out in the house, but business never stopped. So even Marwadi communities felt that if their women get educated in the basic calculation, it is going to benefit their community in the larger sense, because then women can also be involved in the business. And also the girls' education became a prime agenda in 1870s and 1880s and 90s. And many native kings, and I would like to name 3 native states: Travancore in Kerala, Mysore in Karnataka, and Vadodara in Gujarat. The progressive kings here, they made education compulsory for all, including girls, adult and everything. And in many cases, these native kings were doing actually better than the colonial bureaucracy or colonial state at that time in India. So we would now look at some of these pictures. So for example, and also this is a very interesting phenomenon in India. So the photo camera in India, generally you would see the pictures clicked by camera starting around 1870s. So before 1870s, generally it were these paintings which were created to show something, right? So you would see that the artist coming from Britain and making these paintings. So the photographs of schools you would only see after 1870s. So this is again a photo of a school being run for Maratha Brahmin girls, right? So that's why I'm saying that the most of the girls, sending girls to school, this movement was led by the community and for their own girls, like for the community they belong to. So this is a painting by William Simpson, a watercolor. It depicts a school being run for the Maratha Brahmin girls, and it is a painting of 1865. Now you would see the pictures coming. So this is a girls' school in Mangalore in Karnataka, and this picture is from 1870s. And and there's a caption written there: Brahmin Girls School, Mangalore. So even this school was for girls who came from Brahmin community. Belagaum, Karnataka, 1870. So that's why I was talking about that, how in 1870s and 1880s the sending girls to school became a larger movement. So this is a photo from Belagaum in Karnataka. So this is a photograph of a girls' school at Bombay in Maharashtra, 1873. So these are Parsi girls being taught by Parsi women. So this is a school setup. Both boys and girls are sitting together and getting educated. A girls' school in Jaipur, again 1870s and 1880s. So, and again, Rajasthan being a very conservative society, this must have been this initiative must have been taken by the local ruler or the king. And we can see that the girls are sitting all with the parda and with the chadar around them, and there are surrounded by their teachers, and the learning and teaching is happening there. So this is a picture from 1870s and 1880s. So this is again a photograph from 1873. A group of girls student of the Bhagwan Das Purushottam Girls School in Bombay, 1873. So these girls were one of the first girls to get educated in schools. And now you can see the local kings, native kings are now started making effort. So this is from Maharani Girls School in Mysore. She wanted to attract more girls to her college or her school. So she also started music lessons for girls. So a group of girls attending music instruction at Maharani's Girls School in Mysore in 1890s. So Mysore, Travancore, and Baroda, these were the three native states which made education compulsory for all. And this movement then spread across India. And when I say India, it also included the parts of Pakistan and Bangladesh, which later became the independent state. So this photo is from Sindh, Sindh province of British India. Sindh is now like the Karachi, Sindh, that part is. So we can see a school, girls' school in 1873 in the province of Sindh, which is now part of Pakistan. And again, it's a building made of mud, and girls are just sitting and watching the teacher, and the photo is being clicked. Girls' school in Surat, 1873. So now this movement of educating or sending girls to school was reaching to different parts of India. So even in cities like Surat, Belgaum, Ahmedabad, Ahmednagar, the schools for girls were being opened, led by the local community, and even the local administration started investing in schooling for the girls. So 1890, a picture of a school that was run by Tamil Brahmins for their girls in Madras. So you can see that the teachers standing behind that and the girls sitting there. And this is photo from 1907, Hindu girls taking their class in Brahmo Balika Shikshalaya in Calcutta. So this Brahmo Samaj, Raja Ram Mohan Roy and that movement, and Tagore was also part of, like his family also belonged to Brahmo Samaj. They also opened schools and colleges and universities. And in those colleges, universities and schools, women were allowed. So this is a photograph of one such a school in 1897. So like I was saying that we have to look at also read more deeply into what native kings did for the girls' education in India, especially these three states, Travancore, Mysore, and Baroda. So for example, in 1906, Sayaji Rao Gaikwad, he was the first Indian monarch to implement free and mandatory primary education in his state, putting his territory well ahead of contemporary British India. By 1910, there were as many as like almost 3,000 primary schools in the state, Baroda state, which catered to the needs of girls, disabled, and untouchable children. Every single person was allowed in the school. And also, he also made this rule that if you're not sending your kids to school, there was a fine. So you have to pay 2 Anna fine for not sending your kids to school. And that fine was later raised to 1 rupees. So a kind of he made the education compulsory for all. And now even in the parts of, if you visit Baroda, you would see that the grandmothers are great grandmothers are more educated than the younger generation, because they were educated in the time of when Sayyaji Rao Gaikwad was there. So irony. And he was such a like he was so passionate for education that he bought these Rolls Royce from the Britain, and he reintroduced these Rolls Royce. He converted these Rolls Royces into the library, and 50 such libraries were sent out across Baroda state in 1910s and 1920s. And we also know that Sayyaji Gaikwad actually funded the education of Babaji Bhimrao Ambedkar when he went to England and USA to study. So and also because of this girls education and communities making effort, we see that so the first university in India came up, like first modern university I would say, came up in India in 1857 when Calcutta University was established. And 3 universities were established simultaneously: Bombay, Calcutta, and Madras. So 3 universities came up first, and then the 4th university was Allahabad University, which came up in 1887. Right. So you would see that the girls getting educated in these schools being opened by the communities and the schools, and then getting into these colleges. So and it is very interesting that it is one of the Indian movement who studied in India and then went on to become the first MBBS graduate in Cambridge. So it is because of the education they got in these schools, it made them also aspire for these positions, aspire for these professions. So the first women's university in India was established, founded by Dhondho Kesav Karve in 1916. And in this photograph, he is actually standing with the first batch of women who graduated from university in 1821. So the women who are on the left are the women who graduated that year. And then because women were getting educated, they were also participating in movement. And that's how we see that when Gandhiji came back from Africa and came back to India and started his andolans like Asahayog Andolan and other movements he started, women started becoming part of those movements. This was not the case before. So even Congress adhivations, which used to happen before, like for example, the Congress was established in 1885, and the first adhivasion, such like gathering was happened in 1885. For a very long time, there was no presence of women in those gatherings. It is only after the Gandhiji came back to India and he realized that to make the freedom movement or convert the freedom movement into a mass movement, he also needs the participation from farmers, he also needs the participation from minority, but he also needs the participation from women. Women have to play a very important role in driving this whole freedom movement in India. So Gandhi also kind of in his ashrams, when he talked about his basic shiksha, his shiksha niti, he says that the education for women is equally important. Right? Ambedkar also talked about how the women for education is equally important. So that's how we see that from 1920, 1930s onwards, women started participating in freedom movement, like Sarojini Naidu and other Aruna Asaf Ali and all these women, they become the prominent faces of freedom movement in India. And Tagore, so Biswa Bharati University was established by Tagore in 1921. So and then to this whole national movement started, and many of these graduates who were studying in colonial universities, they left colonial institutions, they started their own For example, national colleges were established in Bengal, like Sri Arvindo and other revolutionaries were establishing their own schools in different parts of countries. So it became a mass movement, and women started participating in freedom movement, becoming part of the public life. So and after the they played a very important role in freedom movement also. And I would like to argue that it was because the kind of education they got starting from 1830s 1840s, and and how it became a kind of mass movement in 1870s 80s. And those women only went on to become these freedom fighters, doctors, engineers, educators, and the first person in the world who got a degree in the law, a degree to practice law as a woman, was also a Parsi woman. So we can see how many of these institutions which were opened by the communities with the help of local administration, and also how missionaries played a very important role. They also showed a way to the native leaders that how important is the education for girls. So this is kind of a brief of what I wanted to present today. So we all know about what has happened after uh, uh, freedom, after India got independence. So there have been many committees formed, and now, so when India got independence, the literacy rate was still very low, and still there is a large gap between the literacy of men and women. And also now, even though women are getting educated, we also see that their participation in the formal economy has not improved that much. So even though they are getting educated, for example, if you go to any science college, you would see the equal number of girls and boys. But if you come to any profession, you won't see the equal number of boys and girls. So somehow girls are getting educated doing BScs and BTechs, but they are not becoming uh, part of these modern professions. So they're not becoming part of this formal economy. So now I think the challenge for us, now we are completing 75 years of independence, is that, and it is going to be a collective effort from all of us, that women just should not just get educated, but they should also become part of the formal economy. They should be seen in almost all professions and playing a equally important role. For example, I don't know if and it is possible that many of you also know that, but India is the one of the few countries in the world, or India has the highest share of women pilot in the world. So among all the pilots in India, almost 50% pilots are women pilots. Even in country like USA, that ratio is 6 to 8%. No other country has the share of pilot in the double digit. Only India is the country where there are almost 50% pilots. And in several other spaces, women are doing really well. But now it is our responsibility that they are given safe spaces, safe environment, and also there should be effort from, and not just women, but also other like minority, marginalized section should be given the equal space in educational and professional landscape of it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
So I can now stop sharing, Pooja.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we have one question in the Q&A box from Lipsa Bharti. She asked very crucial to understand how would we visually plot what got taught inside the girls' school and its evolution. Question answer box.
Yeah. So very interesting question. So initially, for example, we would see that there used to be a subject called so where cooking used to be taught. So initially, when girls went to schools, subjects like how to cook, how to weave, how to draw, So also the separation between soft subjects and hard subjects, like hard skills and soft skills, you can also see that playing out there. So initially the girls were asked to, okay, so instead of going for mathematics and science subjects, why don't you study these home subjects, like for example how to, and also how to make yourself in a kind of better housewife, right? So how to cook, how to weave, how to, all these skills were taught in the schools. But the more the more exposure these schools got to the modern education, they also realized that there's not enough buying for these subjects from the community. So slowly these subjects got removed, and then you would see that both boys and girls are studying the same subject. So this was a part of evolution. So initially, women were actually discriminated when it came to teaching them these hard skills, like hard subjects, like so-called hard subjects like science, mathematics, and others. And even now, like for example, you would see that parents generally encouraging that, okay, so if they have both son and daughter, and generally I'm not making a generalized argument, but I'm just saying that you would generally parents generally prefer that they would invest more in the boys education than a girls education. So there are studies like from many institutions published, saying that if they have both boys and girls studying in 12th grade, they would prefer sending the boy to like investing in the boy than investing in the girl. And in many cases, the boy is sent to private schools, but the girls are sent to government schools locally. So that discrimination is still there. That comes from gender, and also that discrimination gets reflected in the choice of subject also. So girls also choose, and maybe are made to choose more art stream, these subjects. So that can also be very structural. So yes, so it has evolved. So now girls are doing equally well even in mathematics and all these subjects. So there is no cultural argument against that ki girls cannot do well. They are doing well, and they're also proving that they can do even better than what boys are doing. So I think even this is going to change.
Thank you, sir. So जब तक कुछ और लोग सवाल पूछते हैं, मैं इसको हम लोग रूरल इंडिया से कैसे कनेक्ट कर सकते हैं? आई मीन अभी ज्यादातर एजुकेशन का जो हमारा रेशियो आगे बढ़ रहा है, वो ज्यादातर मेट्रोपॉलिटन सिटीज या फिर इस बड़े और रिच स्टेट्स का ज्यादा रेशियो है. तो इसको हम लोग उन स्टेट्स में कैसे बढ़ाने की कोशिश करें जो अभी आई मीन उनका लोअर इनकम ग्रुप भी है, और दूसरा एजुकेशन का जो दर है वो भी अभी काफी नीचे है. फॉर एग्जांपल बिहार, उड़ीसा, झारखंड और दूसरे इस तरीके के स्टेट्स.
नहीं तो अब जैसे अगर बिहार में ही ले, तो जैसे कुछ स्कीम्स थी, जैसे बालिकाओं के लिए उनको साइकिल देना है ना, तो फ्री साइकिल डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन टू गर्ल्स इन बिहार. And we saw that the enrollment in schools jumped drastically. We saw a steep jump in the enrollment of girls in schools. So, and also now, for example, in Karnataka, the decision was taken that all the girls or women would be provided free passes to travel anywhere in the buses. So I was also part of a study. So I have been part of many studies. So I also visited and lived in Jharkhand for almost 1 year among the tribals. Also studied tribals in Maharashtra, Karnataka. So this travel expense used to be really high. So there were no schools like previously around the tribal communities. They have to travel along in order to access any school. So now in many states, what they are doing, that they are making these efforts of government providing some kind of passes, free passes to the girls in order to access those schools. Also now efforts are being made that, for example, in case of Jharkhand, so they are appointing local teachers, for example, so in a state like Jharkhand, there are almost 17-18 languages spoken, tribal languages spoken. Kuduk, Santhali, all these languages are spoken. So even efforts are being made that the teachers who teach these students, including girls, they should be coming from local community, and and the schooling or education should not be like even the mainstream population, even we coming from the like the society, the main Hindu society should not impose their own ideology and thoughts on them, so that their culture remains intact. So many such efforts are being made. So and we also see the improvement, but again you are right that uh, uh, there needs to be some serious effort towards kind of, for example, having more schools around the tribal hamlets, tribal communities, having more teachers there. For example, if you look at the data, most of the single teacher schools are in the tribal belt, right? So government needs to make some effort where there are enough number of teachers in such areas, such schools.
थैंक यू सर। हमारे पास 2 और सवाल हैं, नाजिमा मैम पूछ रही हैं। इनका पहला सवाल है, व्हाट आर द implications for the recent efforts like बेटी बचाओ बेटी पढ़ाओ scheme? Has it helped in any way? And second question is, have there been any efforts in the direction of infrastructure development like school, availability of teachers and other resources and so on, especially in rural areas?
Yeah. So like we know that so there has also been judicial activism when it comes to right to education in India. So education is a fundamental right from the age group of 6 to 14. So and also right to education act also mandates that there should be a school in the 1 kilometer periphery of a village or of a habitation. So such laws or have actually improved the infrastructure in the rural areas. So Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan invested a large amount of like or allocation was made into constructing buildings and schools, and also providing facilities like separate toilet for girls, because that used to be one of the hurdles that forced this kind of dropout of girls from the school. So infrastructure has like improved, that there is no doubt about that. It's just that whether that infrastructure is being maintained or used or not. So then there has to be a kind of local awareness. So for example, this is here the problem is more about so talking about from the supply point of view. So government has made effort to kind of provide infrastructure, but there should also be a kind of pressure from the community itself to make that infrastructure functional. So we have seen that where the local community is aware, agar jagruk hai, so they put more effort, they put more kind of demand on the local school or colleges to kind of enroll girls, not just enroll, but provide them adequate infrastructure. And also coming back to this whole campaign of Beti Bachao Beti Padhao, it has created awareness, but I think it should go beyond mere sloganeering. So it has become a slogan that Beti Bachao Beti Padhao, and much of the money has been invested in kind of making this a campaign. But I think we need to move beyond that. Now we need to talk about that how can more women, more girls become part of the formal economy. They get skill, they should be getting skill, they should be getting trained and become part of all the modern professions. So again, it's a also I feel that it's a very defensive argument saying that beti bachao beti padhao. We don't need to save girls, like we need to enable our girls and our women. Like states should be enabling them to do whatever they want to.
So again, एक और सवाल है नाज़मा मैम का. Are there any special schemes or arrangements for girls' education under the new education policy?
So new education policy is continuing on, for example, all the schemes which were started in the starting with, for example, Shiksha Abhiyan or schools. So now I think what new education policy is going to do, so there are going to be these model schools at every block in India. So that is in the plan. And also, for example, there are going to be like especially dedicated teachers training colleges, and then there will be separate model schools for girls at the block level. So that is going to get done. I think that is what has been planned under new education policy. And also teachers training colleges. So for example, I think this 2-year long B.Ed is going to be scrapped, and by 2030 there will be only 4-year long B.Ed course, and for that they're also going to establish like separate teachers training college for girls.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Anyone else जो सवाल कोई पूछना चाहते हो या कुछ बोलना चाहते हो हमारे साथ ऑनलाइन जुड़े हुए लोगों में से? So thank you so much, sir. इसको कंक्लूड करते हुए मैं इतना ही कहना चाहूंगी कि I mean जो क्रक्स है हमारा गर्ल्स एजुकेशन को लेकर, इट्स नॉट ओनली अबाउट कि एक पर्टिकुलर सेक्टर या सेक्शन से ही, ये सबके लिए है। एंड इसका फोकस वही जो मतलब आरटी या न्यू एजुकेशन पॉलिसी या फिर 1986 पॉलिसीज जो आई हैं इंडिया में एजुकेशन पे, तो उनका एक पर्टिकुलर फोकस सिर्फ गर्ल्स एजुकेशन को बढ़ाने पर भी रहा है और हमें उस पर काम करने की, जैसा आपने कहा कि जरूरत है। और सिर्फ बड़े स्तर पर नहीं, ग्राउंड लेवल पे जो ऑलरेडी शुरू होना मतलब शुरू हो चुका है वो
नहीं। और एक और है कि मतलब हमें शिक्षा को, अभी हम लोग शिक्षा को बहुत ज्यादा मतलब उसको सेपरेटली देखते हैं, है ना। तो जो हम लोग, अगर हम लोग जब भी गर्ल्स एजुकेशन की बात करें तो शिक्षा, स्वास्थ्य, जो उनकी सुरक्षा का मामला है, महिलाओं की सुरक्षा का मामला है, साथ ही साथ जो उनके रोजगार का मामला, ये सारी चीजें साथ में आनी चाहिए, है ना। तो एनी पॉलिसी नीड्स टू डील ऑल दिस इश्यूज टुगेदर। सो अभी तक क्या चल रहा था कि अलग अलग पॉलिसीज हमारे पास, शिक्षा के लिए अलग है, रोजगार के लिए अलग है, स्वास्थ्य के लिए अलग है। सो रिप्रोडक्टिव एंड चाइल्ड हेल्थ पॉलिसी इज डिफरेंट। So we need to create a larger umbrella of policies where all these needs start taken care of. Women's needs are taken care of under one big umbrella. And that's why we see that these disparities happening across states, because different states are in different stages of implementing these policies. So we need one kind of integrated policy which looks after the welfare of women and girls in general.
थैंक यू सो मच सर। इसी के साथ मैं हमारा ये सेशन यहीं पर एंड करना चाहूंगी और आप लोगों से जो हमारे साथ ऑनलाइन जुड़े हुए हैं उनसे और सुझाव भी जानना चाहूंगी कि हम लोग अगला दरीचा किस सब्जेक्ट पे या किन के साथ शुरू करें। तो आपके पास अगर कोई सुझाव हो तो हमें जरूर हमारे ईमेल आईडी पे शेयर कीजिए। थैंक यू सो मच सर।
धन्यवाद। धन्यवाद।